Hello everybody, and welcome back to some fan fun times. And once again, if you're new to this series and you've never seen it before and you'd like to know more or know how you can be included in a fan fun episode, there will be a link to the DeviantArt journal in the description if you so choose to read it. It will be there. But anyway, today for fan fun we have basically turning people's characters into other characters, basically humanizations, but I also wanted it to be open to like turning humans into animals and things like that, not just humanizing things or personifying things or whatever. So I couldn't figure out a clever way to describe that one in one word, but we're basically turning things into other things. Ain't that fun? Our first character here that we got to mess with was given to me by Wynut Warrior, which is, I believe I don't exactly know if I'm pronouncing Wynut correctly, but Wynut Warrior, who gave me their alien character that they wanted me to turn into a human. And this character seemed really charming to me, and I'm not quite sure, I can't quite pinpoint why. Something about it just seemed like it would be really fun to personify and turn into a human. So I definitely had a lot of fun with it. The first thing I thought about was that from what I could tell from the character, they're supposed to be a mechanic. So that's the sort of vibe I went off of in terms of characterization for them, in terms of like humanizing them. So one of the first things I had to think about was body types and that kind of thing. And it's made sense for me that if she's a mechanic, and I'm assuming because she's an alien and all of that, and she has a huge ass wrench, I'm assuming she works on large spaceships. So I'm assuming the human equivalent would be working on like cars or planes or something, anything like that. Heavy machinery. So I did imagine that for her body type, I feel like she would be, I felt like it was fitting for her to be a little bit more top heavy, just having the broader shoulders, larger biceps, that kind of thing. So I tried to make sure that that was noticeable without making her too like bodybuilder-esque rip, but just look like she could carry her own weight and, has a little bit of a upper arm strength to her, Now, a person actually told me that I could do her in either her normal outfit, her casual outfit, or her armor. I went ahead and went with the more casual outfit just because I felt like that would be a little bit more realistic to see her wearing rather than armor if she was an actual person. Me personally, when I do humanizations, I like to try and make them as like realistically human as possible. Not for any particular reason other than I just like the challenge of that. I believe it's a little bit more fun and challenging when you actually have to make them a realistic human in some kind of or at least somewhat realistic for a human, rather than saying, oh yeah, they're a quote-unquote human, but they're also super fantasy, like they have natural purple hair or something like that. And that's just a personal thing. I have no problem if that's how people humanize things at all. This is just me personally. I like the challenge of having to try and make them feel like they could exist somewhat in the actual world in some capacity or something when I do humanizations and stuff, but that's besides the point. One thing that was really fun, because they did ask to turn her little ears, her long alien appendages into two long pigtails, and I was happy to oblige, because that's exactly what I probably would have done even if they hadn't asked for it. And I also just felt like it would be appropriate because since she, as an alien, she has no actual real hair or any kind of real formations on her head, so it's rather smooth. I felt like it would be appropriate for her hair to be very tightly tied back on her head. Just it felt fitting for her. And when it came down to colors, I chose to have her hair be dyed, of course, so it kind of is a bit more believable in terms of hair. Just dyed purple hair. And for her skin tone, I went with a kind of a middle brown color, just because her alien skin tone, while it's purple, it's a bit of a mid-tone purple. It's not super light nor super dark, so I felt like that middle brown was a good choice for her. And then she also has these dark gray patches on her skin, so when I was trying to figure out what to do with those, I decided to make the one on her forehead basically a large birthmark, so that it would still be there and it could still be a dark color without totally being like, I don't know, without totally getting rid of it. I felt like I wanted to keep that part in. As for the ones on her hair, couldn't really think of a realistic way to make them a solid color, like a solid shape, so I just made it like these darker fades at the bottom of her hair, just to represent those black spots at the bottom of hers. The last thing that I think was a major, like, interesting thought process is her eye color. When I'm doing humanizations, one of my worst nemesis is yellow eyes, because yellow eyes in humans, they don't exist naturally, not bright yellow eyes, you know? So it becomes a challenge of what do you turn those into without totally losing what sort of vibe they give off of, if that makes any kind of sense. And you can say they're wearing colored contacts if you're making them like a modern day human, but for her it didn't feel very realistic for her to have colored contacts, especially if, like, just for her being a mechanic and seeming a little tomboyish, it didn't feel very appropriate. Dyed hair is just a little bit different than colored contacts. So instead, I decided to actually give her this sort of a bright amberish color instead. So they still look yellow, but a little bit more natural, so it's a bit pushing the boundaries there. But you know, some people do have very bright brown eyes and things like that. There's, you know, the eye color is called amber and it exists. So I felt like that was a good way of keeping the yellow whilst trying to keep it a little bit more believable for a human. One was given to me my Snowless Winter, and when I picked two of the characters already, they were both something else into a human, and I wanted to at least pick one that was turning a human or a humanoid creature into a animal or something like that. So I went ahead with this one, which they specifically asked for me to turn their fallen angel into a, quote, bird of sorts. So that's what I decided to do. So the first job, obviously, when I was doing it was to pick what kind of bird species I wanted to base her off of. And when I was looking around, the first thought I had was, okay, she's got black and white hair, so, you know, the first thought would be magpie. However, the more I thought of it, I felt like a magpie was just a bit too obvious of a choice, if that makes sense, and I felt like I could do something a little bit more unique than that. And on top of that, I recently when I did redesigns, I had a character that I redesigned based on a magpie, so I felt like it would just be more fun if I picked something that wasn't just a magpie and wasn't just the quote-unquote obvious choice, you know? So I did a little bit of digging, and I thought, well, you know, she wears these bright red colors, so wouldn't it be fun to keep the red in her design somewhere without having to put her in a mini red bird hoodie, or not hoodie, beanie, you know. So I looked around and I thought a red-headed woodpecker would be kind of fun, because they have this, like, the black and white feathers, but they also have this very bright red head. So I thought, hey, it's kind of like the shade of red that her beanie is, you know, it kind of makes sense. So that's the sort of that's the bird I decided to choose and that I based her design and colors on. The other major note was that she said that her angel had malformed wings, and the only thing is that they didn't clarify exactly what that meant, and there were no pictures of the wings in the reference. And since these are requests, I don't exactly have the patience to go digging for this kind of stuff, so I sort of just left that to interpretation in my eyes, for this character specifically. So I do apologize, Snowless Winter, if it was totally off base of what you were picturing. I just wasn't entirely sure what malformed wings meant. So for the bird specifically, I went with making one of her wings much more stubby and short, so not able to quite fly appropriately, so very unbalanced compared to her other wing, which if you just to point out, I mainly say that just to make note that no, the wing being extremely disproportionately small is not a stylistic choice, it was an intentional choice. I felt like that would be, because that would inhibit a bird's flight quite greatly, and that would count as malformed. So that's what I went with in terms of the malformed wing, and again, I apologize if that's entirely off base of what it's supposed to actually be. Last character here was provided by Mystic Seer of this little cat character they wanted me to turn into a human, and their one request being they wanted the cat to can still have that necklace that they wear in the reference, and I was happy to oblige. And when I looked at the character, I got this, for some weird reason, I got this like vibe of like, how do I describe this? Like cliche mystery movie rich wife, like, oh no, my husband is dead, what will I do with all this life insurance? I don't know why, that's just the like vibe I got off of her. I mean, I guess to be more specific, I got a very like, you know, I could imagine her being as a human, like looking very chic, having this very nice dress. She wears silver rather than gold, so I imagine she's very like modern classy, if that kind of makes sense. I usually see silver, for me personally, I see silver as much more of a modern indication of like fanciness, as opposed to gold being a bit more of an older form of fanciness. That's just a personal thing, that's not any like actual like, oh well, this is what it means when you put a silver on a character. That was just sort of the vibe I got off of her. So I did have a little bit of fun playing around with designing her dress and designing like little jewelry and things like that, giving her high heels and just stuff to make her look fancy. I would say if this was an actual like commissioned like redesign or something like that, or just a commissioned character, I probably would have made the little chains on the dress actually look more like beads, like similar to how the actual necklace looks, and in this one they do look a little bit more clunky than I was intending, so that is one thing I'll say I wish I could have done better in this picture. But you know, if this was an actual commission, that's probably what I would have done. But as it stands, I did have a lot of fun with the dress, and I did have a little fun like going a little extra with the outfit for this one, despite that one error. Colors, I decided to keep a majority of her color scheme to be like black, dark gray, and silver, with some very bright red accents, because I just felt like those are, I like the black and red. It looks kind of like, just in this case, I felt like would look very chic, you know, I don't know, very stylish for her. I also decided for her to give her that sort of like, because of what I was imagining in terms of like a theme for her, I decided to go with a fairer skinned skin tone and keep her hair color the darker colors with a bit like little bit of gray in there, just to resemble her fur color a little bit. You know, a bit of a callback, if you will. I don't know. And I like the contrast of that, especially with like all the dark dress and the bright reds and stuff like that. Obviously kept the eyes green, kept the jewelry silver, and what's also interesting about this is that I don't usually design characters with silver jewelry, not for any like particular reason. It's just overall I tend to like gold colors when it comes to jewelry a lot more. That's just a personal thing. I don't quite know why. I just find gold colors look very pretty with most other colors, especially when it comes to like black and white. That gold looks very pretty with both those colors. So you know, this was actually very interesting just because I don't work with silver jewelry a whole lot, but it was a nice little challenge for me and all of that stuff. So yeah, I'll just let the music finish this one out. I As always, if you want to learn more about fan fun and possibly consider participating, there will be a link to the DeviantArt journal in the description below. Once again, I had a lot of fun doing these. These are very relaxing and very fun little experiments where I can just there's not really a lot of pressure or anything like that, and they make for some fun video content and stuff like that. But of course, before we go, we have to do those lovely, lovely Patreon shoutouts. Unfortunately, while I was working on these humanizations, I had a little bit of an accident. I may have also turned my lovely patrons into other creatures by mistake, which is my bad, guys, my bad. Unfortunately, the first one to be affected, I will say, the one person who wasn't affected was my $2 tier plus patron. I love you too. I'm very glad you didn't get turned into something else. I'm glad you stayed normal, my lovely $2 tier plus patron. But yeah, you see, the $5 tier plus patrons might have gotten turned into cats, which is my bad. Again, my bad. Isabel GD, Shadow Cat Inc., Mick, Starmeh. I'd love to give you high fives, but you're also cats right now. You don't exactly have five fingers, but I give you spiritual high five. I apologize. Right. So I might have also turned the $10 patrons into birds, and their power levels being over $9 unfortunately didn't protect them from that. It was kind of like a leftover bird ray from when I turned the one character into a bird in this episode. So yeah, Lily Lavender Art, Silver Rose, Gun Moon, Twisted Disaster, Lorinth, Jago, Fema, Petty Prince, Or Arts, Miss Mersucial, Hikayen. Sorry about that. Sorry I've turned you into a flock of birds that can now terrorize the city. Yeah, but I think perhaps maybe the most embarrassing is I might have turned my cool kids club into some animals, and they're all different ones. I might have turned Pythoness into a fish, which really sucks. I apologize. Rose, I turned into a butterfly, which I guess that's appropriate. Now she can actually go live amongst the roses as a butterfly or something like that. Right, Absolute Trap. I might have turned Absolute Trap into a seahorse. I don't quite know how that happened. I think it happened when I turned Python to a fish. Skyek 2 also turned into a bird, but she seems pretty happy about that. It seems like she likes birds, so, it seems okay. And Neko Sister, ironically, also was turned into a cat, just a slightly larger cat than the $5 tier plus patrons. So sorry, Cool Kids Club, about that, but should have you guys fixed by the next video, whatever it may be. So I'll fix that. Zodiac out.